Hey mates, welcome to the Loose Carry podcast. I'm your host, Phoenix Trinidad, and if you're new here, this is Zero Tackle's weekly NRL podcast where we talk about all things rugby league. And today we're joined by Jamie Soward, Lee Addison, and Retro Rugby League. Of course, we go through the two games from the week and the two semi-finals. So the Sharks and the Panthers are now through to the prelims. We do a wash-up for the Rabbitohs, the West Tigers, and the Cowboys. And we talk about Tommy Turbo. His contract has been reduced. They've snatched it back over at Manly, and of course we preview the prelims coming up, so it's a massive episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have plenty of NRL content coming out, especially around finals time and after Grand Final. With all that being said, let's get into the episode. Alrighty, so jumping in with a ragtag that we've had on, I don't think we've had this exact combination on the show before, but we'll get them all on. Lee Addison, first off, rugby league coach, how are you, mate? How's your weekend?
I've been concerned about our friend Mr. Soward this weekend and post-traumatic stress disorder, because Canberra were the first team to go out in straight sets in the semi-finals since 2009, when I think Mr. Soward was at halfback. So he's very well placed to talk about, I think, the impacts that can have on a club. So, Mr. Soward, are you okay?
Yeah, good morning, guys. I am. Since I've been on the show last, looks like Lee's been to Turkey as well. That hair's looking very fresh. So I'm enjoying having him back. I love listening to his content. But, look, it was a big weekend, but I'm sure we'll get it stuck into it.
Absolutely. So welcome, Sowie, and welcome, Retro Rugby League. You're in for a show. I don't think you've been on with these two before.
No, I'm going to get caught in the crossfire a few times here, I predict, but looking forward to it. Right. I just got to look for where I can duck for cover every now and then.
Good to have the gang back. All right, let's get straight into it. It's a massive week. First game coming to you, Retro. So the Sharks got over the Raiders, as Lee said in the intro. Straight sets for the Raiders, but Sharks looking pretty strong on, how'd you find it?
Yeah, I think, obviously I have said previously that the Sharks have developed a boring style. In round 21, when I said that, it was boring and semi-effective. Now it's become pretty effective. Like, the way that they defended, and they defended against the Roosters as well, and just absorbed set after set after set, was really impressive. It was almost like kind of semi-Queensland origin-like. I think that's the real steal for me for the Sharks at the moment. Raiders, though, I was just really confused. I'm interested to get both Lee and Jamie's take on this, that their attack just seemed to be crash play after crash play after crash play, and I just didn't see how that was supposed to fit together, particularly against the Sharks outfit. So I'll throw to you guys now on that. What happened with Canberra?
You want me to go, Lee? That's nice of you. Look, I think the emotion of last week, we can't underplay that, and we can't underestimate what they would have gone through. It's easy to say, yeah, we'll be right, we get a chance in 6 days or whatever else like that. I thought that their start was actually really poor, the Raiders. They had all that ball and they didn't really throw much at the Cronulla defence, so the defence was good, but I didn't really think that they threw much at them. I'm going to put it down to the emotional thing, and Lee spoke about it in the opener when he was introducing myself, that when we lost in 2009, it's easy to go, yeah, let's get our game on and all that kind of stuff. It slaps you in the face, and things that you've done throughout the year probably aren't working. No Ethan Strange, that was a huge loss. But, I was probably, a bit like Tom Starling and these guys, like you're up and about, and the week you lose, you sort of trying to chase that game back and you can't get it back, and we had a similar thing in 2009. So Lee, I just thought that the Raiders early on, if they had gone 12 in front, I think it would have been really hard. But when their try came through Horsburgh and the way that it came, I thought it wasn't like, okay, we're back. It was just sort of like, thank goodness.
Sowie, they just tried to play through Cronulla too much. They tried to play within the scrum lines in the attacking sets, and rather than pushing the ball a little bit wider, getting early ball into the centre's hands and the wings' hands. And I thought that they looked like they were going to have a tough day as soon as Josh Papali'i took the first carry. He got driven on his back, if you remember, and how many times do we see that? I don't know if I've ever seen that, quite frankly. Canberra's game all year, and they even did this against the Brisbane Broncos a week earlier, has been based on go forward and then playing on the back of that, roughly around about the halfway line. Because one of the beauties about playing on the halfway line is the defence is neither defending its own goal line and trying to defend for dear life there, neither is it trying to defend you coming out of your goal line and trying to keep you there. Around about the halfway line, it's a bit of a no man's land, and Canberra have been brilliant all year doing that, sneaking down short sides, long passes the other way, and they just didn't do that. I think they reverted to type under a little bit of pressure and unfortunately looked like the team that everybody thought they might be. So nobody really has tipped Canberra to be the Premiership winners this year. It's been few and far between. I think 2 weeks ago, Gus said we probably need to believe our eyes. They're the minor premiers, but I think with hindsight now, they probably didn't have enough. I'd love your thoughts, Jamie, on how the halfback Jamal Fogarty handled his end of sets, because I thought one of the big differences in the whole game was Cronulla kicked better.
Well, Trindle, I think, is one of the underrated kickers of the game. He's got a big boot on him, and they stick to a plan, but also he knows when to step up and take his best kick. Yeah, with no Ethan Strange, and Canberra have had that model all year, and for Fogarty, sometimes in big games, you need to stick with a plan, but you need to take your best kick. I thought he got that torpy, and then Kennedy knocked it on, and then he sort of kept going back to that instead of maybe kick early, turn them around. It was a big Shark pack. They probably had a bigger pack, to be fair, and try and win without the ball. Whereas, Trindle, they got to the end of their sets, they absorbed that pressure early, and then they were able to go down there and score tries in that first half. But Fogarty's kicking game, I think, for Manly going forward, they're going to have to work out between him and Brooks who does the kicking, because he's got a good kicking game on him, Fogarty, and it's long, and he's got a big boot on him. But there was a lot of pressure on him on Saturday night, and I'm sure he'd love to have some of those kicks back, or those decision-making times back again.
Phoenix on Cronulla, they're sponsored by Pilot, who I don't know if you know, supply erectile dysfunction drugs.
Wasn't aware.
And Cronulla have made themselves very hard to beat. They're stiff competition for anyone. And I don't think they're going to flop under pressure, quite frankly. I think a lot of their game is based on simple things such as holding the ball, getting a very high completion rate. Both they and, I said holding the ball, Phoenix, not holding the balls. It's both them and Penrith held the ball, high completion rate, getting constant field position, reducing piggyback penalties and six agains, and just building pressure over the course of a game. And one interesting thing about Cronulla is when the pressure is on, they really lift their game. So that both against the Roosters the week before and against Canberra this weekend, the first part of the second half, there's been evidence that the opposition have started it better. They've put Cronulla under pressure on their own goal line, and they've defended it so well, and then got their own momentum back and ended up winning the game. Interesting stat, boys. Since round 19, Cronulla have conceded on average 14.2 points per game. And common statistical analysis suggests you probably need to be conceding under 18 to win the Premiership.
Shout out to as well those bench forwards from Cronulla. I feel like in both games where there's been a shift in rotation, forward rotation, Cronulla has held the intensity better than the opposition with those rotations. So, Talakai and Uele and all those guys that are just really ripping and tearing for Cronulla at the minute, that's a huge weapon in their arsenal.
Big pack.
So what do we make of Nicho Hines' game? Because I thought he was fantastic, Sowie. I know that he's copped it a fair bit over the years in terms of big games, but I thought Hines was great.
Yeah, well, when your forward pack's going forward like they are, it allows your halves to have a platform, and that's what Trindle and Hines have been able to play off the back of that. I think Trindle doing the bulk of the kicking and allowing Nicho to just run around and play that sort of stick roaming role has really suited him. I think when we judge players, Like, are we looking at it holistically, or are we just looking at the price tag? We get so caught up in this Nico $1 million. And he's $1 million player, and he should be doing this. He should be doing that. Well, it's not tennis. Okay, you've got to have a solid base. Like the form of the back row is Teague Wilton and Billy Burns. Yeah, like Billy Burns was playing reserve grade for St George. He's gone to Cronulla. He's knocked out Nikita, who's an international forward. He kept him on the bench. Scores a try. Like that kind of stuff helps and gives you confidence. And when you've got confidence around you and they're sort of backing you a little bit, that's what they can do. They've been a really good side, the Sharks, the last couple of years. Have they been great? No. And off the back of that, they needed Nico to do more. But it's a team game. Some days you don't run out there with the $1 million price tag on your head, and if the forward pack's going backwards, there's very many halfbacks that win the game by themselves if their forward pack's been dominated. Sharks are on top at the moment, and he's getting the rewards.
I think we also suffer that a lot of our mainstream media, and by mainstream I mean the old tabloid newspapers and broadsheet newspapers and some of the TV and radio, much of the commentators there were doing the same job in the 1980s and early 90s, and I think what a halfback is and what the game is very different now. Not least the fact that there's double the amount of space between the teams than there was in that time. And I think they're constantly looking for the next Alfie Langer, Peter Sterling, Joey, etc. And I think somebody like Nicho Hynes, it's pretty clear that if you remember, he hadn't played halfback before he went to Cronulla. They had a vision that he was going to be a halfback. And I think maybe the last third of this season and the finals, he's genuinely looking like a halfback who's got a very good balance in his game, knowing when to run, knowing when to keep his passes really simple, knowing when to throw, if you like, what we like to call the money ball that the journalists all get excited about. And I think key to that has been the siege mentality that the Sharks are clearly showing, which is we just put a wall around our club. Whatever anybody says outside this organisation, we ignore, we focus. And I think you can tell Nicho has clearly had the backing of his coach and people around him, and the last few months he's been flourishing. And what I do fear is that if for some reason he doesn't have a fantastic game this weekend, if he doesn't throw some kind of money ball or two, and Jerome Hughes happens to play and does, then it will be, Nicho Hynes has flopped. Nicho Hynes hasn't flopped. I mean, yes, he's starting to look like a halfback now. He probably really hasn't for a while, but he's getting there now. What is a halfback? That's another conversation. But look, leave him alone, I reckon.
Yep. And last one on this game. So obviously Raiders out. A lot of talk about them having overachieved this year. Sowie, what do they have to look forward to next year? I think they'll be a lot better for the finals experience that they had this year. So what's something that the Raiders fans can take into next year?
No, I think firstly you look at the fans. They've had packed out stadiums pretty much all year. Their Sunday afternoon time slot's a really good time slot for Canberra fans. They've got a young side there that's had some finals experience now. When you go through that, you don't really know what to expect in finals games. And, I'm sure that they had visions of winning that Broncos game, week off, and playing in a prelim. And, I think there's a lot to look forward to. They'll bring in Ethan Sanders next year, you would think. That's going to be the big thing, is Strange and Sanders getting some time together. And I think if you're a Canberra fan, you're really positive about the outlook of the future of the club, what they've done recruitment-wise. All their guys are, coming into their prime, I guess, and Ethan Strange will be the leader in that spine next year, which is great. So, they overachieved because we all probably didn't have them doing what they did, but I think it's been a successful season for the Raiders. They've just learned some lessons out of this and carried on into the preseason.
They're just young. Like, that's one of their biggest assets, right? Just a young team, young, hot, exciting. The game seems to be lending itself a bit more to youth and the resilience and the bounce back of youth. And that's not going to stop anytime soon for Canberra. So that's a big asset in Green Machine, fans' favours. Like how he said, they've been turning out in numbers. The Raiders have an appealing kind of crowd aspect. You go there and you see the Viking clap. There's a lot of rival fans who just want to go to Canberra to be part of that. So there's all those kind of aspects that are playing well into the nation's capital at the moment. But I think, there's good times ahead for Canberra. The only thing is just historically they have had this period of like one good season, one bad. Why is that? I'm not 100% sure. I hope it's not the case because I think the competition is better for a lethal green machine. Lee?
What you said and what Sally said, plus the worst thing you can do is write off Ricky Stewart and any of his sides. And even if they have something resembling a bad year, they'll go and beat somebody that nobody expects them to beat at their ground. That's just a Ricky Stewart side. So I think they've just been quietly going about their business down there in the nation's capital, which sounds like a misnomer, quietly in the nation's capital. But I daren't write them off next year. Daren't write them off. I think they'll be. Right now, I'm tipping top 8. There you go.
Yep, absolutely. All right, getting to the second game. So we'll go to you, Sowie. Bulldogs had probably one of the most interesting seasons all year. But do you want to talk about Nathan Cleary for about 10 minutes? Because unbelievable.
Yeah, look, I'm going to hand it off to the other two. I was at Group 3 Grand Final, Old Bar versus Port Macquarie Sharks. So I did some late night homework last night and watched it, the mini, I guess, the 15 minutes. I think what I took away is, the Bulldogs, they'll go through a debrief. Maybe it derailed their season, maybe it didn't. But at the end of the day, in games like this, you take the best player on the field every single time. Cleary, he's the best player on the field. They're on a mission. They've done this before. They went into camp a month before the end of the season because they knew they're going to be on the road and not playing in front of home crowds and stuff like that. So I just looked at the highlights. I looked at the summary of the game and I just thought it's just deja vu. It honestly is just deja vu. I tipped it on my podcast. I thought Penrith would win comfortably. Just the amount of changes and plus emotionally, the Bulldogs were up for that game against Melbourne. They were right in that game right up until the last couple of minutes. What they would have taken out of them, then losing your captain. Sometimes, Lee, you've been in dressing rooms where the players, you look around and you just know that there's something missing. And they would have looked around yesterday and Crichton not being there is a huge
spiritual
They'll
leader.
Be better next year. Yeah.
I also think as well, it's sometimes as simple as looking at the way that teams in opposition tackle. So the collision. Cronulla, from the very first set of the game, got their shoulders in to Canberra and drove them back. They killed their go forward. Sowie's also mentioned a half can look good with go forward. All Penrith had yesterday was go forward. Okay? So Cleary could play with a dinner suit on because he had loads of room. So I thought he did fine. I am going... all year I've been saying that I don't think Penrith are quite the same side and there's a clear thing now that's their weakness, and it's their left side of defence. Bulldogs overcooked that yesterday and kept going there, and eventually they sort of closed it for periods and kept them out. But I'm pretty convinced Madge Maguire will have a plan for that. So they still have some deficiencies, if you like, but the mentality, because this is a side that's been in the last 5 grand finals, won 4 of them. It reminds me a little bit, retro, of when Mike Tyson used to be in the heavyweight boxing circuit. I think sometimes you'd get in the ring with Mike Tyson, and just because you're in the ring with Mike Tyson, you've already lost a few rounds, or don't even last a few rounds. I think the opposition are... I can see your face, Sally. I'm just ignoring it. I think the opposition have lost some of the game mentally before they even step on the field against Penrith.
All the kids all talk about aura, and the Panthers have all this aura. And I kind of like the fact that the Panthers have doubled down on the the outlandish jersey that they're wearing, the four-peat premiership, and they'll run with that all the way through to finals unless they meet Melbourne in the grand final where there'll be a clash. But the Panthers are kind of really feeling themselves. I thought it was just all-out attack from them. There's threats all over the park, whether it be on the middle or on the edge. Excuse the garbage truck going in the background here. They just looked threatening. And in our kind of group chat we had going for Retro Club, people are saying, this Dogs defense is terrible. And look, it probably wasn't the best, but I thought they just didn't know where to look because everything was just happening from everywhere for them. So I don't know. People are predicting could it be another Penrith-Melbourne grand final after all we've seen, and it's very possible. But I just thought Penrith looked great as a complete side, and how good I thought Paul Alamotti out on an edge. He's a big body. He's just a little cannonball. I loved his work out there.
Sowie, what's up
Sowie,
with you? Let's
let
go.
the dog off the chain. Go for it.
When I read the rundown, I just didn't envision we would be talking about Pilot and Mike Tyson in the rundown. Look, I think when Penrith made the 8, I made the point that everyone started looking over their shoulder. It was the 100-meter race where I'm out in front, the Bulldogs were out in front, the chest was out, and then all of a sudden they looked over, and then Penrith were in the 8, and then Melbourne looked over and Penrith were there, and then it was sort of that aura, as you said, Retro, where they didn't want them to make the 8. And I think you're fraught with danger when you don't want a team to make the 8. You start beating yourself. I don't know if you're talking about Mike Tyson, but I sort of understand where you got there. We took a long way to get there, but I understand what you're saying, Lee, in terms of that aura. Mike Tyson.
I mean, we're talking a lot about Pilot. Are you saying you struggled to stay with it for a while? Are you 10 seconds and done? Mate, is that what you're saying, Jamie? Or?
Mate, I've won on the biggest stage, mate. I don't need any encouragement.
Maybe we need not that sort of maybe sponsor. Maybe we need more like a Alterna Leaf or some sort of more chilling out sponsor.
In all seriousness, both Penrith and Cronulla completed very high. I think Penrith were 20 from 21, and then you look at another report and they were 20 from 20. So I don't know how people can get that wrong, but hey, very high completion, and I think there's a message in there. There's a message in there. Very high completion. And the core skills of Penrith too, just simple tackle techniques, catch and pass. Way better than so many teams in the competition, quite frankly. Line runs as well. On the Dogs, we probably need to debrief those doggies a little bit. I feel like they've lost the way at the end of the year. I don't think there's any way of papering over that. Whether that matters in their evolution or not, I don't know. I don't think Lockie Galvin was necessarily signed this year to win the Premiership. This year, for example, I think he's a work in progress, just like Nico Hines has been for a few years. I think if there's one criticism, we can talk about the tinkering with the side, how some players seem to be out of favour for weeks and weeks and weeks and then ended up playing a big part in the finals, for example. So even though I think Cameron Ciraldo is the super coach in waiting, if you like, he clearly is still learning, as we all are, and I think he made a few rookie errors this year with his team selection.
Just one last thing from that game. So there was an incident about midway through. Paul Alamotti made a tackle. I can't recall who he tackled. It might have been Carraz. And as he got up, he put his fist on the person's face to stand up right in front of the touchy. Now, that happened in Origin 1. I think Kalen Ponga did it and got penalised. And only a week or so ago, we saw Hudson Young get penalised for mouthing off at Reece Walsh and then getting sent off. So I'm just a little confused at where we're at the moment with, is roughhousing in or is it out? Is taunting in or is it out? And will we see something like that pop up on Grand Final day and be another point of controversy? I would like to think the whistle gets put in the pocket, but that didn't happen in Origin so much this year. So I'm just a little perplexed where that's all at.
Well, I'm going to cut you off there, Lee. You talk about Origin, you talk about Hudson Young. The person that's been in charge of that game is Ashley Klein.
I know.
So he's the one that set the tone, whether it's in or not. He's going into the referee's room deciding what's good and what's not. We all know it won't happen in the Grand Final. It perplexes me every year that we go, oh, imagine if that happened in the Grand Final. It won't happen in the Grand Final. We've seen things go by the by in Grand Finals, and that's why the frustration around there. I said last week on Twitter, I didn't think Ash could ref the Grand Final, and I stand by that. I didn't think that he handled the Hudson Young situation well. He set the tone for taunting not being allowed at all. So, if you go up to someone and go, oh, nice work, you dropped that one, and he headbutts you, well, you're the one that's given away the penalty. And then you see that incident with Alamotti. I went back and had a look at that one. I saw that Alamotti one. It's been happening all year. Blokes are using this grapple technique to get up and put hands on the neck as like a thing to get up. I just think that's not part of rugby league, so that should be a penalty. But you sort of can't penalise it because we don't know where the line is anymore.
No. All we want is consistency.
Absolutely.
And they're consistently being inconsistent.
Good stuff. All right, so we're going to do a couple of wash-ups for some of the middle-tier teams, also probably towards the bottom of the ladder. But just quickly, Lee, so we'll go with the Rabbitohs first. So what did they get right? What did they get wrong this year? Obviously, they were hampered by injuries for most of the year. But, I know that Soward doesn't like to talk in absolutes in terms of pass or foul, but what did you think of Rabbitohs this year?
I have a theory, and I think Soward will be well placed to either back it up or chuck it out. I think the last couple of years, standards have dropped a little bit at South, and Wayne Bennett has come back in this season and done one of his brutal pre-seasons, which I've no doubt Soward has experienced before. And I think that he has inherited a club that is a couple of years behind into what is required to perform week in, week out at the top level of the game, and they were learning it as the year goes on. And they started the season well, but then the injuries caught up with them in a significant way. Having a poor culture can mean not looking after your body quite as well as you should for a couple of years, and I think that possibly may have caught up with them. All year I've been saying to South fans, you're not as bad as the ladder looks. I would, if we're going to go with the absolutes, I would scrape a pass because I think they were one of the better sides at the bottom end of the ladder. If you look at some of their results and how they played, they might get whooped for a couple of weeks, but then they come up with a really good couple of performances and they look like they were back on track. Soward?
Agree. I think that South Sydney this year, with the amount of talent and where it was placed, Cody Walker, in and out of the team, he's so vital to their attack, not only as a player, but as a coach on the field. He's the extension of Ben Hornby and Wayne Bennett and what they're doing attack-wise. Latrell was in and out a couple of times. Cam Murray's a huge loss. They got so much exposure to some of their young guys. I think next year, I reckon there's 5 teams that I could name that will be in that top 4. And 3 of them probably aren't playing this weekend. That's how much it could change. So I think South past year they got some exposure to young guys. They'll be ready to go for next year. And Lee's right about the training. You think you've trained hard under other coaches, and then Wayne comes in and breaks you, and you're like, it might take a bit of time. It didn't for us at the Dragons, but I think next year they can bounce back in a big way, South.
Thinking back to your Dragons, Soward, I think your Dragons from memory, in 08 and 07, you were pretty close as well, weren't you? It's almost like Wayne came in to put the finishing touches to a team that was in its Premiership window. Do you have that same memory?
I think 08 we finished 7th, and 07 I think we may have missed the finals. But 05, 06 they had great sides, St George, and a lot of representative players. I think when Wayne came in, and the biggest strength that Wayne has is he makes you believe in what you're good at, and we go and everyone does their job. So he came in and opened up. I think he just got the best out of everyone at the same time, which you've seen that in what you said. Some of their results this year for South, no one gave them a chance. They beat Parramatta, and then they were going to get the wooden spoon. It's crazy to think that, for me, yes, the top end is what we talk about, but it's crazy to think that Des Hasler and Wayne Bennett were playing for a wooden spoon. Neither of them got it, which is really, really cool to see. I love the fact that we kept that intact.
Yeah, I agree with everything basically that's been said. It's the year of grit and grind for South Sydney in the wake of injury and young guys that have got a chance. Ashton Ward, never heard of him, and he came on the scene. I thought it was a 16-year-old kid that wandered on the field. Geez, he looks so young, but he held his own out there. So there's some bright sparks for South in the future. They seem to be pretty content as a playing group, although a few whispers around what Latrell's thinking for next year, but be that as it may, I think there's could be some good times ahead at South. But Soward, you've been to South training a little bit this year. Is there anything that you've seen there that you go, ooh, that's something to put in the back pocket for 2026 or beyond?
I don't know, mate. Can't remember.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very diplomatic.
All right, we'll stick with you, Retro, on the West Tigers. So same question. What do they get right? What do they get wrong? Pass or fail?
Well, I mean, one angle that I'll be able to contribute a bit is like the kind of fan experience and what the like buying habits of fans and stuff have been over this year. And West Tigers have had a great time. Before the season even kicked off, I was selling a lot of West Tigers merch, so they were up and about. And someone said, "Oh, they're always like that." I said, "Not like this year." They were really starting to believe. So fans were getting behind their team. They had some exciting performances on the field. They're a fun team to watch. Jareem Buller's out the back, and Luai bringing that bit of swagger he's got. Some of those forwards doing their thing. Terrell May. I think there's a lot to like about West Tigers. And for one of the years in a long time, we didn't really hear that much boardroom nonsense, with the exception of that period of the Lockie Galvin stuff. We kind of remained pretty drama-free from West Tigers, which is great. That's a rarity.
Definitely in context, because there was still a bit.
Well, I said, absolutely. Yeah. And remember, last couple of years in NRL 360, every episode was just basically a West Tigers, So things that I think hopefully tracking in a good direction for them. Fan experience wise, I think that will increase with renovations get done to Leichhardt and Campbelltown. The scenes coming out of there has been a lot more like content creators getting behind that and bringing us into the Tigers realm that's kind of been forgotten. So from a pure fan experience point of view and stuff, it's been good for Tigers fans.
Definitely a pass. Because they didn't win. They didn't earn the wooden spoon. And I think the fact that they were mathematically still talked about as potential final option in the last 4 weeks or something, that in itself is a little win. There was still that period in the year where they went into a little bit of freefall, and if getting into the finals and winning this premiership was so easy, it would be a lot easier. I think they're on a journey, and because it's been down the bottom of the ladder for so long as an organisation, it will take some time, Sally.
Yep. Big crowds, big players coming to the club. I think they're on the up for me.
Yep. Absolutely. And we'll stick with you, Sowie, for the last wash-up on the Cowboys. Again, same question. What did you think? And where they go right, where they go wrong?
Fail for me this year for the Cowboys. Too many rep stars to not be consistent in their behaviours that they've built over the last couple of years. Defensively, they wanted to beat teams 32-30, and I think that's got to be a real attitude adjustment for the club going forward. They've got so many attacking weapons. I think, once they had a few injuries as well, Hill and Lukey, start of the year. But the big thing for the Cowboys is, they may have missed their chance because, Reece Robson's probably in that top echelon of hookers. They get Reid Marnie there next year, which I think is a pretty fair swap. But, they've had a couple of years now where they've had this good side, and they've had, they've blooded some youngsters here this year, Purdue, and they just can't get that halfback right, which is, for me, it's a bit of a worry. If you don't know who your halves were, and a bit like the Bulldogs, Clifford was out, he's not there next year, now he's back, and then Duffy was the successor to Clifford, and then he played one game and got rissoled, and then he was out, and then they sort of mixed it around a little bit. So they need to get their defence right next year, but they need to work out who their spine is and just let the kids play.
I think, 10 minutes ago we were talking about how good the core skills of Penrith Panthers were, the catch and pass, the tackle techniques, etc. When I analysed Origin in the middle of the year, the tackle techniques of a couple of the Cowboys players were really poor, particularly on one shoulder in particular, the weaker shoulder. And I think, obviously, when you talk about their defence, Sally, the absolute essential part of defence is the ability to tackle in different circumstances and scenarios. And again, I'm going to make a sweeping assumption, but I think over the off-season, Todd Payton will probably need to focus on improving individual players a lot more, because when they were in the representative environments, Ruben Cotter and Jeremiah Nanai just simply had really poor tackle techniques. Really poor. I'm talking stuff that an under-13 would do. And I don't see that having been corrected. And then when I look at what Sowie has just said, or hear what Sowie has just said, it stands to reason. There's a link there that I'd certainly look to try and fix.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just been a confusing year to watch the Cowboys, and you see them have some half decent performances or some good performances, and others getting blown away by 50. It's just, as a fan, you're sitting there trying to tip, and you think, what am I supposed to do with this? So I don't know, and I don't really know where help's coming from North Queensland either. I mean, Reid Marnie, like Howie said, is maybe a swap. You know, you argue whether it's improvement up or down, but it's certainly not like a huge revelation that will change everything in North Queensland. I don't know where the helicopters are coming for them.
Yep. Interesting stuff. All right. So a little bit of contract news before we get into the previews for the prelims. So Retro Turbo, he had an initial deal at Manly that kept him there until the end of 2029, worth around $2.5 million. So now Fox Footy reporting that they're going to be reducing that initial agreement of $850,000. So they've basically gone and said, we offered you too much, and they're taking back a few $100,000 off that contract. So what did you think of that one?
Yeah, so I mean, I saw our man Isaac Issa report that, and his numbers were the original contract a year was around 900, and it's gone down to 750. Now, my thoughts on that is not necessarily about is it bang for buck and is it cap management and whatever, and I will throw to Sowie on this, but it's the notion of we've seen the whole DCE thing play out, and we've seen these notions of somewhat feeling supposedly disrespected by offers. We've seen in previous years that Tom Trbojevic has approached the club and said, dock my pay because I'm out too much. So he's acted very honourably, as has Jake. We've heard reports as well that Tom says, I won't play against Manly. And we'll take him at his word for that. And so there's this thing here where, yes, you want to play this game of salary cap management and money ball and whatever, but you also want to honour those guys who have honoured you and stuck with you and been honourable in those regards. Now, I know, I'll throw you in a sec just here, Sally, and you can take it away from here, but I think there is something in this space that is worth thinking through, because when you're trying to entice players to come from your club, surely there's an angle that says, hey, one of the things to consider when coming to Manly is that we will treat you right. If you end up being a long-term stayer, we will stick by you. Is that of any credibility, or is it all shot, Jamie? Go for it.
Loyalty, I don't know why we get stuck on this whole loyalty thing from the player point of view or the club point of view. Very rarely does the club and player win on contracts. Usually the player gets overs or the club gets them at a bargain. For me, I think that this one with Tom is, what are we doing if we're saying, yeah, this is the offer, and then we're going, oh, wait a second. Like, surely that has to go through channels where you approve the offer. Are we happy with this? Does it fit in the cap? Is this in our vision? All that kind of stuff would have gone before those numbers were pointed. Now, if that's all happened and I say to Leeg, we're going to offer you this, and I've gone through all those channels and everyone's agreed on it, and then someone goes, oh, wait, we should do this. Surely there's other ways around it. Like, it just seems a bit like up in the air, a bit sort of, we'll just see how we go. Like, if you had to make salary cap, you go to Tom and you go, hey, listen, we want to put you in this in the playing, but we want to offer you a job at the end, or we're going to work out a way to be able to do that. Now, that happens at every club. We all know that. But I just think that every time we talk about loyalty, I think that Manly right now are torn. They need to decide whether their brand and their image of looking after their players, their great players, is going to be what they're known for, or if they're just going to be ruthless and move on. And my advice, I never said I said I'd love to stay at the club, but I never wanted to not play against the club, because things happen. When you hear a player say that, it's for me, Tom's such a great player. Like, if Bulldogs rang and said, mate, Tom, come be the fullback for the Bulldogs, like, he's got a chance to win the championship. If something happened and he went to Penrith or wherever, I just think he's such good value right now. He's worth the money that he's asked for and he's been offered. But Lee, it just seems like Manly right now don't really know what kind of destination they want to be.
They've been through a bit of a metamorphosis over the last few years. I think they wanted to move the club forward from the Hasler and Fulton era and do things in a certain way. The media again, the same media I mentioned earlier that have old networks that started in the 80s and the 90s. Manly is the suburb, and the northern beaches of Sydney are the affluent suburb of Sydney, where a lot of these people break bread together. I think that Manly is a club that leaks significantly at times, and I find it really sad that these details started to leak, whether they're true or not, because I personally don't think it is any of our business what rugby league players are earning. I really don't. I hate seeing it in the media. These guys aren't public servants. We're not paying tax for them to play rugby league. We don't need to know what they are earning. The media, apparently, so many of the media stories, that we hear are off the mark anyway. Honestly, if the reality is, if they've offered him something and then gone, hang on a minute, no, we need to readjust it, then that's bad. That's bad. Not great. Is it a bungling administration? I don't think there's enough evidence to say that. But obviously, they've upset some of the Sydney journos somewhere along the line, so they're trying to stir something. So honestly, the other thing about Turbo, should he be offered that much money anyway? I mean, he's not played that much for the last 4 years.
To be fair, though, Leon, your note about how much players earn and whatever, I mean, and you've said this yourself previously, don't forget there's times where that's agitated by managers. So it's not just like it's people sitting there picking. That's used also sometimes from the inside or by clubs to make things happen.
Yeah, I just hate it.
Yeah.
I think it's, I'd hate for my salary of anything to be public knowledge, particularly when I'm getting 10 times more than Soward to be on here. So,
well, mate,
zero still zero.
And if you don't
like that Ashes trip anymore, mate, you'll be kicked off Instagram.
If you go back on it, Phoenix, I'm not coming on next year, but I won't do it. I won't go against you.
We're taking salary conversations off air, thanks.
No, it should be public knowledge. Come on.
Let's get to the prelim previews. So, Sowie, Friday night, Amy Park, Storm versus Sharks. What do you got for us?
Well, this is it's going to rest on one thing for me, and I'll probably reserve judgment till later in the week. But if I see Jerome Hughes on that team sheet, I think it changes the way that Melbourne will play. I think it will give them a lot of confidence. Jana Pezzett was fantastic in week one of the finals. I thought he was probably Melbourne's best player, to be fair. But they're coming up against a side that really holds no fear and has got no expectations other than the people, as Lee said, inside those four walls. So I think this is going to be a cracker. You know, the last four teams have played in grand finals in the last 10 years, which is great for rugby league and great for fans. I've got no idea at the moment, mate. I'm going to probably just wait and see what that team list looks like, and then later in the week make a judgment. There's probably a lot of drama surrounding certain people. Like who do the Sharks bring in for Hazleton? What does their bench look like? He's a big body, but at the moment you got if you split, you go with the home team, Melbourne. We just think that they might be too strong at home, but again, I've got no idea at the moment with that game.
My worry about Hughes returning is how fit will he be. So the last time he returned after a few weeks of a layoff, he went lame pretty quickly. So Storm do give the impression of a team that are just limping through the end of this season, but they are the Melbourne Storm. And if Penrith have an aura about them for the last 5 years, Melbourne have one for the last 20. So it'd be very, very brave man to completely write the Storm off, but I do have the feeling about the Sharks, their ability to absorb pressure, sponsored by Pilot, their ability to absorb pressure under key stages of games has been something that stood out in the finals for my money, and they will have no fear about going to AB Park retro.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way that the Sharks have been defending. They've just been defending relentlessly. The only thing is that I don't know if Melbourne will let the Sharks get away with some of the errors and the weight of possession that they've been given against other teams. The Roosters had some really dominant periods, as did Canberra, and not capitalise that. I don't know if Melbourne will relent on that as much. I kind of feel like, anything could happen, but I expect it's just one of those games, a bit like the Dogs, where Melbourne will just find a way to win like they do. And so for that reason, I would just tip Melbourne. But like I said, anything could happen. This year has really had a bit of like 2017 about it, where the Cowboys made that final, just scraped in and then went all the way to the GF. Sharks could do the exact same thing.
Yep. All right. And then the big one, Sunday afternoon, 4:05 p.m, Suncorp Stadium, Broncos versus Panthers. Let's go to you, Lee.
Penrith conceded 26 points yesterday to a team that has been clunky in attack for a long time. They also conceded 24-something against the Dragons 2 weeks before. They're playing against a team that was the biggest point scorer in the regular rounds of the NRL, and they're also playing against a team that was 16 points behind Canberra and looked dead for all money and then came back and beat them. I think this is going to be a game where Broncos have to back their attacking instincts like they have done for much of the year. They have to tighten the nuts and bolts in defence because Penrith will rack up some points, but Penrith definitely need to tighten up the bolts, because I think what Penrith have done, even in their big wins this year, they've just slept for 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a game, and I don't think they can do that against Brisbane, Soward.
Yeah, I'll probably go against you here, mate. I think that they took the foot off the pedal. 36-6, they led that game. The games that they've blown teams out, they've had to sort of save petrol where they can because they've been behind all year. So one thing in finals that you can do is you can lean on your defence, and Penrith have been in that sort of top 3 defensive side the last 5 years while making 5 consecutive grand finals. Easy to lean back on your defence, hard to go to your attack, and we've seen that with the Raiders and Roosters the last couple of weeks. Brisbane haven't been good defensively all year. They've conceded big scores. I've got Penrith winning.
Yep. One last thing that I wanted to get your take on, Sowie. So I spoke to Chad on Thursday about the build up into grand final week and what that experience is like in terms of these prelims. So Storm and Sharks on the Friday night, Broncos Panthers on the Sunday night. So that might be an extra 2 days rest that you give whoever wins on Friday night. Do you think that is too much of an advantage, or do you think that's a huge advantage to that team coming into the grand final?
I'm going to say the same thing I say every year. I don't know why don't we have a week off? It's stupid. We're so far behind everything else in terms of build-up. We try and squeeze everything in to the lunchbox for that week and not give the players a chance to actually enjoy grand final week. If you get up a HIA this week, you're going to miss a grand final, and it might not even be a HIA that's affected. You might just be adrenaline run and not be able to pass the test. You should be able to at least have a break and go in the grand final. I think the only way forward for the NRL is to have a week off and not have this grand final squeezed in off a 6-day turnaround, a 7-day turnaround. Yes, it's an advantage for Melbourne or Cronulla. The way they had to do that, I'm happy with the logistics of the AFL and Geelong, and you know what it's like down there, Phoenix. It'd be chaos. For Melbourne on Saturday night if they had to get into AAMI Park. But we are so far behind. It shouldn't even be an issue anymore. With HIA rules these days, retro, and we talk about fan experience, touch wood, but if one of the main guys goes down, are we people paying a lot of money to go and watch the grand final and the entertainment? We want our best product on there.
Yeah, I suppose it all just comes down to money. This is the influence, right, the broadcasters and stuff have. And if it's deemed better for them to run the things at certain times at 8 p.m. instead of 4 p.m., that's where we go. That's the price you pay in professional sport, right? So I don't see that changing. Don't know really what else to say.
I think from the fans' point of view as well. I mean, I know my neighbour, Ross, getting a shout out for the second week in succession. He bought 4 tickets for the grand final. He's a Raiders fan. So he's got to sell them now. Hopefully he sells them at face value and doesn't make money on them.
Well, he's got 2 weeks to sell them.
Eh?
He's got 2 weeks to sell them.
Yeah, exactly. And wouldn't that be good if there was an extra week for the grand final for a team that loses this weekend?
Yeah, true.
Right?
True.
And also, there'll be people that need to plan things to go to a grand final. An extra week would be fantastic for them.
Not bad. Not bad. Wasn't expecting that take, but like it. Alrighty. Thank you, gentlemen, again for your time. Massive week. Soward, what do you got going on? You hosting a prelim watch party somewhere?
Oh, yeah, I'll be at my house. No, I'll be at the Hunter Valley, mate, turning one on, respectfully, of course. And then I'll be with Take the Two podcast with Guru. I'm in studio this week and next week for the grand final, mate. So, yeah, a couple of big shows down the year.
Love it. Lee Addison, a rugby league coach. What do you got?
I'd like to direct people to the Rugby League Coach Stories podcast this week. I've interviewed Ash Taylor, who was very much, if you like, the Lockie Galvin of his era in some ways in terms of the media pressure he had about his performances, etc., because of a big contract. He's a coach now, and he's somebody that I work directly with, so we talk about what he's learning transitioning from player to coach, but also we do make mention of the media pressure that he was under when he signed a big contract when he was a halfback at the Gold Coast Titans. So Rugby League Coach Stories, wherever you get your podcasts.
Unreal. And a retro rugby league. What do you got, mate?
Of course, we're in the last few weeks of finals, so if you are looking to grab a jersey because you're heading to a finals game or you're heading to the grand final, go to retrorugbyleague.com like Peter Volandis would say it. We've also just started a branch of our thing called Retro Club, which is for members. That's just started on Patreon. It's also on Instagram, but Patreon for people who've had trouble, and you can get yourself access to these caps, jackets, and the pink ones behind me there. And I have just managed then to nab 4 tickets to Broncos versus Panthers, so I will see any of you good people there.
Can you tag Pilot in any posts about this, because we might get some sponsorship?
That's probably not my thing. I'll leave that one to you. But yeah, I'll stick with KFC. I'll get on board with KFC.
All right, fellas. Thank you once again for your time. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next week.